Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. My name is Paul, the Canadian Snowman, here with the first Punic War. For those of you who have been following like the poll in my channel, I made a poll of videos series I would do next, and one of the series was this Punic War, and the others was Hannibal, and then there was the Third Crusade, and then a couple others. Well. As I'm making this video, it's like neck and neck. It's like basically even between the Third Crusade and Hannibal. And just in case, this is my fault. This is on me. So I apologize to those people who might get mad at me over this. So I do apologize. I should not. You guys know me. Like I want to do something in order, and I wasn't thinking and. If Hannibal does win, I would actually prefer to kind of know the history, because I know that's like Hannibal's like the second Punic War, isn't it? And so I really prefer to do the first one and then the second one. I think it just makes sense, and I would just know what was going on. So as soon as I posted it, my mind. I was like, did I make a mistake in doing this? So I'm still gonna. This is only a 4%. I figured this is only a 4-part series, right? So after this, it's only 4 because I was gonna do a few videos before I did the winner of the poll anyway, and so I figured it's only a 4-part series. I'm gonna do this and then do the winner of the poll. If Hannibal wins the poll, I'll do that next. But if it doesn't win the poll, just say like the Third Crusade wins the poll. I will do that next. But I just want to have this one done and over because Hannibal apparently is very popular, and I just think I should know what happened before then. So I do apologize to those who I guess picked this in the. If you picked this in the poll, this first Punic, you should go back and recast your vote to one of the others. So but anyways, I do apologize about how I did this, but it is what it is. I'm still gonna get to the winner because I would have let it sit there for a few days anyway, and so just these 4 episodes will be that few days, and then I'll get to whatever wins that poll. So we're gonna jump in at the first Punic War, guys. I'm excited for this. This is the first time I've done a video on an Invicta, so I don't know what to expect. I mean, I'm sure they got real quality, so I should know how they do their videos. So I'm really excited to see how they do theirs, and yeah, I'm really excited to get into this war. It's these videos are 25 minutes, so this will be exciting, guys, because like basically they're pretty long videos, so that's pretty awesome. And so anyway, let's jump into it. If this is your first time watching, I'm sorry about that explanation. I just had to explain it to to the history family, that could have been following me. So, anyways, please hit that like and subscribe if you are new. And yeah, let's just jump into this. And if you are new, you should definitely go vote on the poll. But yeah, like, subscribe, and we have a lot of fun here. So let's jump into this. Hope you guys are having a great day. And I hope those of you hope you guys can understand. I know I'll hear about it if you don't. But anyways, let's jump into this, guys.
Welcome, guys, to part 1 of my first documentary mini-series. We're going to be diving into the first Punic War. So I'm going to be walking you through the pretext for this war, going through each and every step of this 23-year-long conflict between two ancient superpowers. The war would have been fought between 264 and 241 BC between the mighty powers of Rome and Carthage. And in this first episode, we're going to be diving into the eve of the war, setting up the battle and the war, and trying to investigate where each faction and each power stood.
Like Carthage, the only reason that rings a bell is because of the movie Gladiator, where they reenact the Battle of Carthage or something like that. That when I hear Carthage, that's what comes to mind. Other than that, I really don't know anything about Carthage, at all. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And because a lot of these series and videos I do is completely, most of them are completely new to me. I really don't know much or any backstory, so I'm just a heads up.
Battle and the war, and trying to investigate where each faction and each power stood before outright conflict started, and to see what led to the spark that ignited this bloody, bloody war. So let's go ahead and take a look first at Carthage. Carthage was originally a Phoenician colony that was established in 814 BC on the northern coast of Africa. The Phoenicians were located initially in modern-day Lebanon, and they had very, very good, even prolific seafaring capabilities. They established colonies all along the Mediterranean. Carthage was one of them, as I said, founded in 814 BC, well before the foundation of Rome, which was, according to Rome's mythology, supposed to have been founded in 753 BC. So that's about 100 years after the founding of the Phoenician colony in northern Africa that would grow and become Carthage. Now, Carthage would become one of the more famous, of course, of these Phoenician colonies, and Phoenician, the origins is why we call the Carthaginians the Punic powers. And Carthage as well developed into a large agricultural power. The coast of North Africa would have been much more...
Okay, so Punic is basically Carthage, right? Okay, so basically all these Punic wars are from the same area. I had no idea what the Punic stood for, so I can get all three. There's three Punic wars, right? I guess they all start from the same area. Is Carthage the same area? Am I getting this right? I'm a little slow learner, but I didn't know Punic. Never mind. On with the show.
To a large agricultural power, the coast of North Africa would have been much more plentiful and would have had a much more reliable climate when it came to agriculture, and so they were able to develop a huge agricultural base and actually had surpluses, and those surpluses they were able to ship abroad. And in combination with their agriculture, the Carthaginians kept up with the tradition of Phoenician naval supremacy, and they established a huge trade empire. They were famous for their eventual construction of a the circular naval harbor in Carthage itself, and the trade network of Carthage was incredible. The Empire of Carthage initially was just the nearby area around the original settlement, but as the colony grew and grew, it essentially took over the land around it, and instead of paying subsidies and paying fees and fines and tributes to the African kingdoms, Carthage was eventually able to subdue these and was able to in turn get tributes from them. Carthage then expanded, took over the northern coast of Africa, and when we find ourselves at the beginning of this war, Carthage has significant holdings along North Africa, Spain, Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica. If we look at Rome, on the other hand, as I said, Rome was, according to mythology, founded in 753 BC, and it had a reign of kings. The last of the kings was ousted, and in place rose a republic, and Rome then went on to fight with its neighbors, the Latin Leagues, the Etruscans to the north, and the Samnites to the south, and would eventually kick out the invading Greeks, who were led by Pyrrhus of Epirus, and in doing so, by the time of the Punic Wars, the Romans controlled all of Italy from the Po Valley all the way to the south, and they had not yet expanded past the Italian peninsula. Now let's go into...
So, like, Carthage already has a bunch of land at this time period, and Rome isn't Rome yet. Like, it doesn't have that huge, you're used to it basically owning all of this, basically everything that you see on the screen. And so, this is like, I guess it's going to be basically a pretty even battle, because you think of Rome fighting, like, you think Rome has overwhelming favorites, because usually they just have just a bigger army, and they just kind of crush usually, like when they were going against the Gauls and stuff, they kind of just crushed them. And so this is going to be like a little more evenly matched, I guess. With Carthage, I don't know when it comes to their engineering, how and their I guess their battle style. I guess that'll be new to me in this. And like I said, I'm sure the Romans probably have the same style. I'm guessing, because I've seen the Caesar series. They have the same fighting technique. I mean, they might not use that technique yet, so I'm assuming they will though. But And this is like, I'm glad he's kind of laying out the foundation for, I guess, the war that's coming. So this is cool.
And they had not yet expanded past the Italian peninsula. Now let's go into the analysis of where both of these factions stand in terms of their army. So Carthage was a colony, and as it expanded, it essentially kept its citizen body centralized. That is, in terms of each of its expansions, whenever it would conquer a new people, it would have a treaty with them, and instead of bringing them into the Carthaginian body, essentially, and making them citizens, Carthage instead made them give troops in times of war and pay an annual tribute. And so in this way, the Carthaginian core, and that is the citizen army, was very, very small. Carthage, in this case, had to rely on troops sent by its allies and also the recruitment of mercenaries, which is why Carthage is more notable for its fleet. That's where it amassed most of its forces, and when it came to the land armies, it would mostly draw these from the allies, as I've said.
So my first thoughts are it kind of leaves Carthage, I think, I guess, Rome might be doing the same thing, but at this point, but as a disadvantage because you kind of have like a whole bunch of different armies that are kind of come fight for you that have different tactics and all that. So, and maybe different, I guess maybe different languages, and they're all different. So it'd be a lot harder to kind of organize, for an attack because you all have different fighting styles. If you get what I'm kind of what I'm saying, So I wonder if that'll kind of like come into effect in these wars. Just my first thoughts, initial thoughts.
The land armies, it would mostly draw these from the allies, as I've said, mercenaries, and at times of extreme danger, they would have deployed their core citizenry, who would have formed up in mass ranks with the spears, solid sort of Hellenistic formation, we could say, in the spikes, but they were not notorious for their skill. The Carthaginians were more of a sea and naval power.
Okay.
Now, when they did field their troops, they would have all sorts of different contingents. Notably, they were known for their use of the Numidian cavalry, which proved very, very effective and would have been very skilled at skirmishing, attacking, retreating, baiting enemies, and their true masterful use would most predominantly be shown in the Second Punic War. Carthage also was able to field African forest elephants and strong troops from Gaul, those raised in the Iberian Peninsula, and so it had a huge sort of motley crew that was able to meld together, and it had a big variety that could...
if you're new to my channel, I pause a lot. Whatever game they're playing, I don't think this is the same game I've seen like other videos, but it's just cool. Like I'm really loving the how they're showing it off. I mean, 'cause it looks a little different than I guess what Epic History and Kings and Generals do. It looks like maybe they're using a different game, or I don't know, but it just looks a little different. And so that game looks really fun. How they're just kind of sitting there in the trees, man. They're just waiting for I don't know, waiting for the other guys to pass by. I don't know. It just looks really fun. And like when they said like they're a big naval power, I have heard in the comments that there is a big naval battle, so that's kind of exciting, really to look forward to, because you don't really see a whole lot of naval battles in these videos, so that'll be fun.
Draw from lots of strengths, but the weakness came that it was uniting disparate people from different cultures, different languages, and inherently the only central structure that held it all together was the Carthaginian leadership. So that was the general and his staff. So that was the central thing that held the beating heart of each army, was the Carthaginian general. Now the general for Carthage was someone who was appointed by the leadership at Carthage, and he would serve until Carthage decided to change him. So he did not have term limits, and because of this, the longer he was able to stay with his army, the more proficient it could become. And as it stayed longer and longer in the field, the troops could form a much closer bond, knew how to interact with each other, and would really identify with that leader. And over time, as we saw with Hannibal, they could become a very, very strong group of men. Now, The Carthaginians, however, as I said, had a limited number of citizen bodies, as well as the fact that they had to recruit relatively expensive mercenaries. This meant that when they were fighting their battles, they had to pick and choose when they fought, because an army was a very valuable thing. If it were to be lost, they would have to retrain it completely. And as I said, initially when you have this disparate factions coming together and uniting in this mercenary army, they have no experience, they're very hard to use. And so once you get a certain level of efficiency with your army, it's something that's very precious that generals who were serving for numerous years were not likely to want to risk. And so these generals would often be very cautious.
So cool.
On top of that, you have to note that these generals, if they were to fail, Carthaginians, the leadership, would be not afraid to punish them. There are often stories of Carthaginian officers or leaders being crucified by their own side in light of failures. Now we turn ourselves to Rome. So this is pre-Marian Rome. At this time, the legion actually comes from the Latin for levy. The legions were essentially citizens who were raised up, and with each consular army you would have 2 legions and 2 legions of allies who would form the flanks. And so the Roman legions were basically drawn up from the Roman citizenry predominantly, and in opposition to Carthage, whenever Rome took over a new area, it would try and bring them into the central body of Rome. So Rome had a long history of conquering a people and turning them into allies. It would make independent treaties with them, and it would not always, but often extend sort of an enfranchisement. It would make them citizens, and so with every new conquest, Rome would be able to grow its reserves of manpower, and this made it extremely resilient. This made it that the Roman legions could form up, and even if they were defeated, they could rise up again. Now, the legions themselves would have been formed in 5 different components. The first component would have been the velites, the skirmishers up front. These would have been the younger troops. Then after that, we have the hastati, the principae, and the triarii. Now, the hastati were the younger men. These would have been in their early 20s, less experienced but very eager. The next rank was the principes, late 20s, getting into their prime. They would have been similarly armed with the hastati, and then you have the triarii in the back, the most elder of the shock Roman troops, and they would have been armed with spears, and they would have been the crack troops.
I think it's I like how they explain this, because, like, you're the new guys, you're throwing in the front because, the ones in the front are probably going to get slaughtered. So you're trying to kind of save your experienced guys, in the back. Because I'm sure if you run and slam into, like, your enemy, you're kind of going to go, maybe a lot of you are just going to fly through it. So, if you do make it, with the guys on the front line, you're pretty much toast, man, because they're going to fly through. If they do get through the front line, they're going to be in the middle, their enemy they're going to be basically surrounded. So, it makes sense. You kind of use your new guys, the ones that aren't so well in front, and they kind of get the battle going. Then you goes back to more and more experience. So you're trying to save your more experienced guys, and because it doesn't really take much, I guess, experience. It's pretty much luck to survive, even if you have your best troops up front. Maybe if you're flying at each other, there's a good chance that even if you're a great soldier, that you're going to get whacked because just the initial, I don't know, contact. I don't know. I just like how they explain that, and it makes sense. And I'm loving the visuals. I really am loving these visuals. It's pretty awesome.
And they would have been armed with spears, and they would have been the crack troops. There was an expression that if something was hard going, the expression was it came down to the triarii, because they were always the last line. Now, the fifth part would have been the Roman cavalry, the equites. These guys would have been drawn from the Roman nobility who could have afforded horses. Now, it's important to note that as well as having these strong, disciplined troops, initially Roman forces were not very capable. Just like with the Carthaginian forces, they needed training time, and so it took a while for the Roman general to meld them into a fighting force. But what Rome had over Carthage is that every time it fielded its legions, they had a set way to organize them. They had different levels of command. They had the consuls, the legates, the tribunes. They had all of these different ranks going all the way down to the centurions. So even though the troops were fresh, the manner in which they would go about organizing and leading them would always stay the same, and that made it that much easier.
So yeah, basically what I was saying earlier. You know, they all know their roles. They all know what they're doing. When they tell the new guys or the older guys, what they're doing, they all know they just all know what they're doing automatically. As for Carthage army, it's a bunch of people from different armies that do things differently. So it's a lot harder to organize. So Rome definitely the advantage when it comes to, I guess, tactics right now. So it's pretty much the same as when I was watching Caesar, kind of.
Which they would go about organizing and leading them would always stay the same, and that made it that much easier to regulate the training of their troops. Now let's move on to the general. The Roman general is a very important figure in his army. The general, it's important to note that a Roman general is also a Roman politician. They cannot be taken apart, essentially. Both are the same. In order to go up the ranks of a political life, you must also go up the ranks in the army. Both were entwined. You could not be an effective politician without being an effective general. There were some cases of people such as, those like, Cato, who might have made a name for themselves, or you could have had Cicero, an orator, people who were skilled and known for other things, but even those men served in the armies, and it's notable that the greatest generals, the greatest politicians, were both the same people. So let's go into this. The Roman general would have been appointed by the Senate, would have proposed it, and the people would have ratified it. The people leading Rome's armies would have been the consuls. There were 2 each year, and it's important to note that their term lasted 1 year. That meant that if you were going to get enough glory, you had to achieve as much as possible within that 1 year. That made it so that whenever an army of Rome took the field, there was tremendous pressure on the commanding officer to seek out glory. And so whereas the Carthaginians were more careful with the deploying and the movement of their troops, the Romans were very eager to engage in battle, seek glory, especially with the reserves of manpower. And so that's the main 2 differences. And where we end is that Carthage predominantly...
Okay, so that, once again, so that might be an advantage for Carthage because they want to get into battle, because they want to rise up the ranks, the Romans do. And that could be like a downfall for them because they're rushing into a situation where they might not have the best, they might not have the advantage. They're maybe where they should hold back, and get a better position instead. Like they want the glory, instead of maybe someone else overtaking them. So, that could be a disadvantage right there, in the future.
Power. And so that's the main 2 differences. And where we end is that Carthage predominantly is going to be a sea power. Rome is going to be a land power. And that's where we're going to be moving into this war.
All right. That's cool. That's going to be a cool dynamic.
Now, what were the relationships between these 2 nations before the war? We know that both nations had trade relations. They each acknowledged each other's spheres of influence. Rome, of course, had its own traders who would have come in contact with the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians were all around the Mediterranean, and so both of these had contact. There are references to 3 treaties between Rome and Carthage. These would have outlined where each faction could and could not trade, if there was exclusive trading rights, or if they could both engage in trade in certain areas. There were, inside of these treaties, assertions of essentially Rome would be left to its own matters in Latium, and Carthage would be left to its own in North Africa, and so they both kind of recognized their spheres of influences. The last part of the treaties would have come with the Greeks. Pyrrhus, he had come in and he was answering the call of the Greeks in southern Italy and Syracuse, and so he kind of stirred up the bee's nest, and he was fighting against both the Romans and the powers in Sicily, and so that kind of brought Rome and Carthage together, and they had some treaties together, although the extent of their alliance was not very prolific. There are stories of a Carthaginian fleet being within the vicinity of the battle when the Romans besieged Tarentum in southern Italy. But besides that, there was not, I should say, an extensive mutual alliance taking place, but both of them were in direct contact. Now let's talk a bit about Carthage and its relationship to Greece. So as I said, Carthage was a Phoenician colony, and the Phoenicians had colonies all around the Mediterranean. Carthage grew to be very large, and it established its own colonies. At the same time, however, the Greeks were sailing merchant vessels, and they were establishing colonies. And this proved to be somewhat a tenuous situation, with both of these colonies in different areas coming into conflict. And so you saw both of these maritime powers fighting for control. And especially some of the main rub of it came down in Sicily, where Carthage had its power mostly to the west, Greeks had most of its power to the east, in Syracuse, and so you had a lot of confrontations there, heavy involvement in Sicily, and they had basically relatively many battles for dominance along that island, because it was key for landing ships, refueling them, and controlling trade in the Mediterranean.
Okay.
So as we move forward, the Greeks actually won a great victory in 480 at Himera, which coincided with their defeat of Xerxes at Salamis and Plataea.
Okay, so like the Greeks are a player, kind of like still a player back in these days. Okay, so that's interesting. So basically, the first episode right now is basically getting us, we're just gaining knowledge on the backstory and why what each side has to bring to the battle, and why we're about to get conflict here.
Himera, which coincided with their defeat of Xerxes at Salamis and Plataea. So while the Greeks were able to push back Xerxes, they also had this big battle where they defeated the Carthaginians in Sicily. So this kind of puts it in a time frame where they're fighting the Persians, and as well the Greeks are fighting Carthage. And so all the while Carthage has this not so great relationship with the Greeks, conflicts are always boiling over in Sicily. And most importantly is going to be Syracuse. Syracuse is going to be a thorn in Carthage's side, especially when it comes to Agathocles, the tyrant of Syracuse. He actually landed a force in North Africa in 310 BC, leading armies there, and he was able to defeat the Carthaginians there, and he went through, devastated the Carthaginian lands, and although he was not able to lay direct siege to Carthage itself because of the city's size, he was able to scare the Carthaginians and leave his mark, showing that Carthage was not going to get away with interfering with Greek affairs, and that Syracuse would always be there to fight Carthage.
This is cool, man.
Next we have Pyrrhus, who comes and intervenes in Sicily and Italy, comes to the aids of the Greek. The Greeks were feeling pressure from the Carthaginians and the Romans. They call for Pyrrhus to come. Pyrrhus arrives with a large horde of Greeks, and as I said, they will go on to fight Rome and Carthage together. And it's possible, as I said, that the Carthaginians had a fleet that aided the Romans during their siege of Tarentum in 272 BC. In any case, Pyrrhus was defeated, and this sort of had a domino effect. It brought Rome into its power formally over control of all of Italy, especially southern Italy, and with that, Pyrrhus was ousted from Sicily, giving Carthage an edge in Sicily. So all of a sudden you have Carthage regaining power in Sicily, you have Rome in southern Italy. So these great powers are now elbow to elbow, and it's only a matter of time before both of their expansionist policies and their own interests come into conflict.
Okay.
Now we're going to start moving into the actual eve of war. While the deeper causes of such a conflict are difficult to trace,
well, it makes sense, why come to war, because both sides want to expand, and they're both basically superpowers, and they're sitting right next to each other. So the only way they can expand is really to go through one another, and so it was just inevitable that this was going to happen. So this is going to be cool, man. I mean, the visuals are awesome, dude. Like with this game, I want to play this game, dude. Like those guys jumping off the boat, man. That was just so cool, man.
Eve of war. While the deeper causes of such a conflict are difficult to trace, the incidents which provide the spark for wars are usually more obvious. So we're going to start off in Sicily. The start of this first Punic War is going to have its origins in Sicily, particularly at Messana. So that's going to be a city at the northeast of Sicily, looking across the straits at Italy. And it's in this city that we are going to have to analyze what happened. So let's go ahead and talk about the tyrant Agathocles, who had invaded Carthage in northern Africa. So what he did is he relied on mercenaries during his rule. However, when he ruled, he brought in some Italian mercenaries, some Oscan-speaking troops from Campania, known as the Mamertines. And when Agathocles finally died, in the political turmoil, these mercenaries found themselves without employment, and they decided to exploit the political chaos at the time. And so when they were admitted to Messana freely by the population, they turned on the population, slaughtered them, and used it as a base for more operations in the area, more raiding, pillaging. And so these Mamertines established themselves as a terror in that area and were raiding up and down the coast. Now, when we look across the straits, as I said, from Messana to Italy, there lies a city called Rhegium. That city held a garrison of 4,000 men sent by the Romans to protect it from Pyrrhus. However, those soldiers were also Oscan-speaking companions. And seeing what their fellow countrymen did across the straits, they decided to do the same thing, turned against the inhabitants of their city, slaughtered them, took their women, took their riches, and equally decided to form their own band and their own city there. Now, once Rome was done dealing with Pyrrhus, they turned their army to Rhegium, and they would not allow this breach of their own faith. And what they did is they sent an army in 271 BC. The city was taken after a long siege, and 300 of these companions were taken to Rome for a public flogging and beheading in the Forum. Meanwhile, we turn our attention back into Sicily. We must look at Syracuse. So in the aftermath of Agathocles and his demise, we rise Hiero. He was a skilled soldier and a shrewd politician, and he comes to power in Syracuse. He's able to break the power of the Mamertines after a decisive battle at the river Longanus in 265 BC. Seeing this reversal, the Mamertines are then going to send out embassies to both Rome and Carthage, pleading for help, pleading for some aid. Now, Carthage is the first to answer because it has troops in the area, and it wants to oppose Syracuse. Syracuse, again, as I said, had its tensions as a Greek city that had invaded North Africa, and Carthage really wanted to stick it to them. So Carthage turns and allies with the Mamertines, and what it does is it deploys a garrison force in the citadel at Messana. Now, at the same time, the Romans decide that they're not going to let this happen. They see Sicily as being too close to their newly acquired dominion of southern Italy. And so what they're going to do is they're going to send an expeditionary force to Sicily to aid the Mamertines. And so what drove the Romans to do this is actually the people's desire for war profiteering, especially the equestrians. The equestrians would have been the nobility of Rome who had the most representation, the most power when it came to making decisions, and they're the ones who would have not only benefited from the loot and the booty, but would have also supplied the arms and all the supplies, these rich government contracts essentially that they would have had in funding this war. And so they would have had a lot to reap the benefits of further conflict, especially when you're dealing with a war against Greek states and Greek cities here, which were supposed to have lots of wealth. So Rome decides that it's going to be engaging in this war. It's going to muster its forces, especially the consul of the year, Appius Claudius Caudex, has a desire for glory. And as I said, these politicians are elected for 1 year, and so in 1 year they have to get military glory. And so it's a combination of Rome's greed and also the quest for glory of her leaders that they decide to aid the Mamertines. But there's also the hypocrisy of the Romans, on the one hand, punishing the Oscan-speaking companions at Rhegium.
I mean, so basically, obviously they want wealth. I mean, there's all these wars on you. You want to gain more land, more wealth, and like I said before, these generals they need war if they want to get up in the ladder. They have to fight, right? So this is a good a reason as any, to make your way up the ladder as a general, leader. So pretty much it. Yeah, this is basically just an introduction. They're kind of showing us some cool shots of landscape, and like it was kind of cool to see the boats in the water. So I'm very interested now to see in the future of this how the battles are going to take place. Because right now the visuals are awesome. I wonder, like in the battles, the visuals are going to be just as awesome, and we get to see them really go at it. So as it's building up to like, okay, to something awesome. I feel like.
Romans, on the one hand, punishing the Oscan-speaking companions at Rhegium, who had done the same thing as the Mamertines. The Romans had punished them, and now they're going to the aid of a similar faction, all just for greed and for glory. Now we're going to move on and to see what happens. So Rome is gathering a consular army and requests that a transport fleet from her allies meet at Rhegium. Now Rome did not have her own fleet. She may have had probably 10 ships, but this was really nothing. The Romans were not skilled sailors, and so they would have had their maritime allies at Locri, Tarentum, Elea, and Naples supply a fleet. At the same time, Hanno, a Carthaginian admiral, is at the head of a Carthaginian fleet, and he thwarts Roman attempts to cross the straits by Messana, and he says that he will not allow the Romans to even, and I put quotes here, to even bathe their hands in the sea. And so the Carthaginians are able to thwart repeated Roman attempts to cross the straits, and in a display of Carthaginian naval might, they actually return all the captured Roman vessels and prisoners. Claudius, however, who is the leading consul, is able to transfer most of his forces across the straits at night and arrange for the betrayal of the Carthaginian garrison at Messana. The troops, that is the Carthaginians, are evicted, and their officer is crucified by Carthage for this failure. So what we have here is the Romans and Carthaginians both trying to ally with the Mamertines. Rome, in the end, ends up being successful because they sort of are able to force the Carthaginians out. And so once Carthage witnesses this betrayal, it finds itself in the odd predicament of being thrown into a hasty alliance with Syracuse, in which they both decide to march in retribution on Messana, and it shows the degree to which all parties were acting out of opportunistic self-interest, that Carthage would ally with a longtime enemy in order to essentially punish this nation to the north that had so recently made an alliance and then betrayed them.
Wow.
Now, at the same time, the Romans are making their move and assault Hiero's camp outside of Messana. At first, the Syracusan cavalry, which were more notorious for their skill, are able to drive off their Roman counterparts. This is for two reasons. The Romans were not particularly well known for their cavalry forces, and also the difficulty of running the Carthaginian blockade of the straits meant that they were not able to disembark enough cavalry. So as I said, the Syracusan cavalry are able to drive off their counterparts, but the legionary infantry hold their own and are able to seize victory. The following day, the Romans then engage with the other Carthaginian camp. Initially, the Romans are driven back, and the Carthaginians, however, lose cohesion in their pursuit and are then routed by the Romans who have reformed and are able to push them back. These engagements were mostly large skirmishes, but effectively ended the siege of Messana. At this point, Claudius takes the initiative and pushes into Syracuse territory, burning and raiding along the way. Now, the city is too large and fortified to be assaulted, and Claudius must withdraw as his term of office expires. However, the bloodshed has only just begun, and the gears of war are turning. The year is now 263 BC, and Rome will be sending her consuls for next year, Marcus Valerius Maximus and Manius Octacilius Crassus, to Sicily. Each will be at the head of 2 legions and 2 allies, for a force totaling of 40,000 strong. Romans are eager to gain both gold and glory in this new war. Legionary boots tread over vanquished enemies. The Roman military machine is mustering. Carthage is also, however, mobilizing hundreds of warships and thousands of soldiers for the cause. Their longtime holdings in Sicily are under threat, and the invaders must not be allowed a foothold. Initial losses were only a result of treachery, and soon the Armada will be in position.
Wow.
Both sides going into this conflict are supremely confident in their ability and anticipate a swift victory. However, neither could dream that the bloody 23-year war that lies ahead is going to claim thousands of lives on both sides and lead to a dramatic shift of power. And this is where I'm going to end this episode, The Eve of War. Check in the next time for the next episode as we start this 23-year-long conflict. Thank you.
Wow, so there you have it. We're about to get down and dirty coming up here. Initial thoughts. Rome does not have doesn't surprise me because the Caesar Wars, they had a navy, but like Rome doesn't take the navy, their navy that serious. But obviously they're extremely outnumbered, extremely. So any kind of battles on the sea, I can't really see Rome winning, unless there's maybe weather comes into play or something, destroys a lot of ships or something like that. So Carthage got some awesome naval battles. Carthage looks like they're going to kick butt there. Uh, but on the land battles, when it comes to, like, yes, army and tactics, I expect Rome to excel in that department. So wow, it's kind of cool. They're right there next to Italy, but battle it out. So this is really cool, really interesting. Um, so a lot of dialogue in this. Obviously, there wasn't a whole lot. I mean, you got to see some like cool shots with the game and everything, and at the end there, like, cool kind of battle. But there wasn't like a whole lot visually to kind of you mostly had to listen and kind of like figure out what's going on just through the dialogue. And so I don't know if I pretty much follow most of it, and I kind of get the sense of things. I forget a lot of the names and stuff, but pretty much you have a Rome against Carthage. I mean, they also had their little allies that they got on. I mean, Carthage had to ally with its enemy to get rid of Rome, pretty much. And yeah, the two heavyweights about to go head to head right here, and this is the start, guys. Only a 4-part series, though, guys, and then after this series, we'll get into the poll winner. So basically, have 4 days until we get to our poll winner, and if you've already picked this one in the poll, I would definitely say go ahead back to the poll and change your vote. I believe you can do that. I think you can because I voted in polls before and I was able to do that, so I think you can. So yeah, so whatever after this 4-part, we will go into the winner of the poll. I apologize about confusion and how things were done. Like I said in the beginning of the video, but here we are. I hope you guys are excited about the first Punic War. I'm excited about it. I hope you guys are, because if Hannibal wins, we'll jump into Hannibal and we'll know what happened before Hannibal, and just say Hannibal doesn't win and another video wins, like maybe like the Third Crusade wins, we'll jump into the Third Crusade. But you guys know eventually I'm going to jump into Hannibal anyway, and when we do, it'd be nice to kind of know what's going on before that. So those are my thoughts. And so anyways, guys, I hope you like this video. I hope you're ready, because this is basically the introduction, and then we're going to jump into like I'm pretty sure that all these battles, which at the end of that video, those battles, them colliding, look pretty cool and epic. So hope you guys are excited and enjoying this history ride with me. Hope you guys have a great day, great night, and I'll catch you guys in future videos. You guys are awesome. Peace.